You can watch this video alive because something died 11,000 years ago. It stood 4 meters tall and could slam a human into the ground with one paw. Scientists found fragments of human bones in its fossilized feces. What does that mean? Your ancestors were once its food. Paleontologists say, if this monster hadn't gone extinct, humans might never have left the caves. What's even more chilling, its descendants are still alive today, hidden in the Andes Mountains of South America. They watched there as humans evolved, from prey to masters of the earth. And the ancient Romans once caught this monster, throwing it into the Colosseum to fight lions. A lion was torn in half in one round. This monster is called the South American short-faced bear. In 2011, at a construction site in Buenos Aires province, Argentina, workers dug up a bone. At first, everyone thought it was from a dinosaur, but when paleontologists pieced it together, the entire lab fell silent because it was a bear's thigh bone. According to a study in the Journal of Paleontology, this bear weighed between 1,600 and 2,000 kilograms, equivalent to the height of a fully loaded SUV standing up, over 4 meters, taller than a one-story building. Its shoulder blades were wider than an elephant's, its forelimbs were as thick as utility poles, and its jaw could generate over a ton of bite force. One bite could snap a horse's spine. You might ask, how could such a huge bear exist on Earth? The answer lies 3 million years ago. Back then, a land bridge suddenly emerged between South America and North America, called the Panama Isthmus. This bridge triggered the wildest animal migration in Earth's history. Northern saber-toothed cats, wolves, and lions poured into South America, while southern giant ground sloths and ancient camels began moving north. This migration completely transformed the ecosystems of both continents. The ancestor of the South American giant bear was right at this time. From North America, came over. When it first arrived, it was only the size of a modern black bear, unremarkable and not fierce. But South America's environment drove it to evolve wildly. Why? Because back then, South America was a paradise for giant bears. Everywhere were fat, juicy herbivores, giant ground sloths, giant armadillos, and macrochenia. They were huge, but slow-moving, and it didn't even know what natural enemies were. More importantly, South America at that time had almost no large predators. What did that mean? It meant that as soon as the ancestors of the South American giant bear arrived on this land, they instantly sat at the top of the food chain. No competitors, and an endless food supply. So it began to grow wildly. Each generation was bigger, stronger, and more ferocious than the last. Its shoulder blades grew wider, its front limbs got thicker, and its jaw became stronger. Hundreds of thousands of years later, it had evolved from an ordinary bear into one of the largest terrestrial carnivorous mammals ever. But what really sent chills down scientists' spines was its diet. Researchers found deep wear marks on the fossilized teeth of the giant bear. Such wear only occurs from long-term gnawing on hard bones. Even more terrifying, in some giant bear caves, they discovered skulls of ground sloths and ancient horses. These skulls were covered with bite marks from the giant bear. In other words, it didn't just eat meat, it also ate bones. It would crush its prey's bones and suck out the marrow. This kind of behavior is almost never seen in modern bears. But for the South American giant bear, it was just another day. But you might not expect, this 2-ton monster wasn't a pure carnivore. Scientists analyzed carbon isotopes in its teeth and found that a significant part of its diet consisted of plants, berries, wild grasses, and tree roots. It ate everything. This shows it was an omnivore, just like modern brown bears. But this wasn't because it was picky, it was because it was too smart. South America's climate was unpredictable, with alternating wet and dry seasons. Pure carnivores could easily starve to death during food shortages. But the South American giant bear didn't. When prey was scarce, it switched to eating plants. When plants were also gone, it would steal prey from other predators. A saber-toothed tiger would work hard to kill a prey, and then it would charge in, and the saber-toothed tiger could only get out of the way. This adaptability allowed it to dominate South America for over 1 million years. But even the mightiest dynasty has its day of collapse. Around 800,000 years ago, the South American giant bear began to disappear from the fossil record. Its extinction wasn't due to a single disaster, but a chain reaction of events. First came the influx of competitors. As the Isthmus of Panama stabilized, more and more northern predators moved into South America. Saber-toothed cats became fiercer. Bears from North America also began moving south. They not only competed with giant bears for food, but also brought new diseases. Secondly, the prey decreased. The plump giant ground sloths and ancient camels dwindled in competition. The giant bear's size went from an advantage to a burden. It needed to consume a massive amount of energy, but food became increasingly hard to find. Scientists found that the descendants of the giant ear became smaller with each generation. From an initial 2 tons, it gradually shrunk to 1 ton, and then to several hundred kilograms. Their teeth also changed. From sharp fangs for tearing flesh, they became flat teeth for grinding plants. This was a compromise out of necessity. Being smaller meant needing less food. Becoming more omnivorous meant it was easier to survive. And so, the former overlord gradually degenerated into today's spectacled bear. The spectacled bear now lives in the cloud forests of the South American Andes. Its weight is only around 100 kilograms, less than 1/10 of its ancestor. It eats almost no meat. It primarily lives on bromeliads, berries, and tree bark. But if you look closely at its skeletal structure, you will find some astonishing similarities. Its humerus has a unique hole, a signature feature of the short-faced bear family. Its forelimbs still retain a powerful grasping ability, able to easily climb trees 30 meters high. These features are the legacy of that monster from 11,000 years ago. If the South American giant bear was the king of the South, then in the North, there was an equally terrifying monster, the North American giant short-faced bear. This bear was long considered the largest bear on Earth, but a 2011 study showed that it was actually slightly smaller than the South American giant bear. However, that doesn't mean it wasn't fearsome. The North American giant short-faced bear had particularly long legs. Scientists estimate it could run at speeds over 60 kilometers per hour, faster than a cheetah. The structure of its nasal cavity suggests it had an extremely keen sense of smell, able to smell carrion from several kilometers away. But new research has found that it might not have been a good hunter. Its legs were too long, giving it poor turning ability, and it was hard for it to make sharp turns in a chase. Scientists speculate that it was more likely a robber. When other predators had labored to kill their prey, it would rush over, use its size advantage to drive them away, and then feast on the spoils alone. Imagine you are a saber-toothed cat. You have just killed a bison, and are about to enjoy a big meal. Suddenly you hear heavy footsteps in the distance. You look up and see a monster standing 3.5 meters tall, charging at you. What would you do? You can only run. That was the rule of survival in Ice Age North America. But in Europe, another giant bear took a completely different path. It was called the cave bear, weighing over a ton. It also stood 3 meters tall. But when scientists studied its teeth, they discovered an astonishing fact. Its molars were flat, almost incapable of cutting meat. In other words, this giant monster was actually a vegetarian. It didn't eat meat, only grass, roots, and berries. But that didn't mean it was easy to mess with. When threatened, it could kill a wolf with one swipe, or snap a deer's neck in one bite. The cave bear's survival strategy was conserving energy. It didn't attack proactively, didn't waste energy, and hibernated in caves during winter. This strategy allowed it to survive for hundreds of thousands of years in the Ice Age. But in the end, it lost to a more fearsome opponent. Around 24,000 years ago, modern humans, expanded into Europe. They found the caves very suitable for living, and began competing with cave bears for living space. Archaeologists have found cave bear bones, mixed with human stone tools in many caves. What does this indicate? It shows that humans and cave bears once lived in the same cave, and in the end, only humans survived. All the giant bears, whether from South America, North America, or Europe, went extinct between 10,000 and 20,000 years ago. The reason is simple. The Ice Age ended, the climate warmed, and the large prey they depended on disappeared. And humans, with fire and weapons, took over the lands they once ruled. Bears still exist on Earth today, but whether it's the polar bear, brown bear, or black bear, they are only shadows of that giant bear dynasty, and those colossal creatures that once ruled the Earth. Their story tells us a cruel truth: strength is never eternal. Even the fiercest predators cannot escape the judgment of time.